Well, good morning and hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting Recreate Responsibly State of Recreation quarterly convening call. I'm sure I got those words out of order for what that's officially called, but welcome nonetheless. I wanted to pause real quick at the start of our call and just sort of reflect. A lot of you will be doing some great service this weekend in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King's legacy as we celebrate MLK Day across the country. And all the work that we're doing out there for equity, inclusion, and justice. Just thank you so much for all the amazing things that you're doing out there. I'm going to now pass it over to Eugenie to continue on with our welcome.
Hi, folks. Thanks so much for joining us. And thank you, Dusty, for always making our Fridays bright with leading this call. But thank you, everybody, for joining. Really excited to kick off 2023. Important to note, if everyone has the agenda, you can see it in the chat. And feel free to follow along, take notes, put in comments, and then think with the format of this agenda, how you might like to participate or what you'd like to see in future State of Recreation calls. Remember, this is a community that we're all building together. With that in mind, our theme for this meeting is an evolving outdoors and how critical public-private partnerships have been and will continue to be in facilitating inclusive, accessible, and climate-forward outdoor practices. And with that in mind, that's going to kind of lead our thought in how this agenda was shaped and where we're going to be hearing from folks in terms of folks who are land and water managers, or folks who are doing great work with nonprofits or brands throughout the outdoor industry. And to kick off kind of our 2022 as we evolve, it's really important to look back where we've been. And so to kick off our 2022 kind of recreation retrospective, I am going to introduce Chris Perkins from the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable.
Thanks, Eugenie, and great to see so many familiar faces on the call. My task here is to present a look back at the year that was in 2022, and it really was a pretty amazing year for recreation across the country and in the States. I'm Chris Perkins. I'm Senior Director at the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable, which many of you probably know is a coalition of outdoor recreation trade associations, nonprofits, and businesses representing the full diversity of recreation activities: hiking, biking, skiing, climbing, hunting, fishing, motorized, camping, boating, hospitality, RV, you name it. And so much to celebrate in 2022, one of which being the revitalization of the Federal Interagency Council on Outdoor Recreation. This was actually something that started back in the Kennedy administration, but it lay dormant for many decades and was brought back. As you can see here, it's a partnership between the U.S. Forest Service, Department of the Interior, U.S. Army Corps, NOAA, and the whole purpose here is to present a unified front for interagency coordination around outdoor recreation. So what might FICOR do? There's a number of great opportunities it has on things like transparent and real-time visitation data, or next generation technology and infrastructure in outdoor recreation, especially looking at like electric vehicles and electric charging. Funding for recreation across the United States. Many of you know that recreation funding has stagnated over the years, and with as many people getting outdoors as have over the past few years, it's a perfect opportunity to really ramp up funding in recreation opportunities. FICOR also has the chance to address public health through outdoor recreation and connect federal agencies and recreation activities with public health organizations. Of course, expanding diversity, equity, and inclusion, and equitable access to the outdoors, particularly for communities who've been historically underserved or discriminated against in the outdoors. Opportunities to take on climate change across agencies with a holistic perspective of how climate change is affecting recreation today and into the future. And then finally, implementation of congressional actions. This is a huge win for recreation at large, and from ORR's perspective, we're really looking forward to supporting this new interagency council in the years to come. It was also a great year for federal recreation infrastructure spending, and I'm presenting just a few totals here. The bipartisan infrastructure law, which was signed in 2022, designated $100 million for infrastructure at resilient recreation sites. So this is broken down between the U.S. Forest Service and the Department of the Interior. intended to address places where recreation occurs at a significant level and make those places more resilient to present and future use. A new player in recreation infrastructure this year was the Economic Development Administration. And having the words economic development and outdoor recreation working together is a huge win for our community. Because as we all know, when we invest in parks, trails, marinas, campgrounds, we help surrounding communities. We create new jobs and businesses. The Economic Development Administration, as part of their American Rescue Plan funding, designated $111 million towards recreation infrastructure in the past year. Then looking back at the Great American Outdoors Act, and specifically the Legacy Restoration Fund, the Department of the Interior and U.S. Forest Service, nearly $500 million going towards projects benefiting recreation over the past couple of years. It was also an amazing year for the recreation economy. As many of you know, the Bureau of Economic Analysis looks back every year at the year prior and tries to quantify the value of the outdoor recreation economy. So in November 2022, they announced the numbers for 2021, which were super impressive. 4.5 million jobs, which is 3.3% of US employment, $862 billion in gross output. And when you look at the growth of the outdoor recreation economy in 2021, nearly 19% compared to nearly 6% growth in the US economy. So just showing the incredible resurgence of outdoor recreation and the outdoor recreation economy after a tough year during COVID. And this map just shows some of the state by state levels in terms of GDP. And this next map shows the percentage growth of the outdoor recreation economy at the state level. And you really see a lot of those places in the West, which have great access to federal public lands and waters, growing at nearly 30%, and then all the way down in Hawaii, nearly 50%. It was also a great year for bipartisanship. Fresh off the heels of big wins in the Dingle Conservation Recreation Act in 2019, or the Great American Outdoors Act in 2020, the newest addition to this portfolio of bipartisan recreation legislation was America's Outdoor Recreation Act of 2022. It passed the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee with unanimous consent. I think anytime you have Bernie Sanders and Mike Lee voting in unison on the same piece of legislation, you're doing something right. Didn't pass the House in the 117th Congress. Now the attention shifts to the 118th Congress and getting this really important piece of recreation policy improvements that has no cost to the American taxpayer through and signed by the president. It was also a great year for the recreation economy in rural communities. A lot of you are probably familiar with the RERC program, which is administered by the US EPA, the US Forest Service, Appalachian Regional Commission, and Northern Border Regional Commission. In 2022, they announced their second cohort. This time, 25 rural communities from around the United States who are going to get technical assistance to grow their recreation economies. Nearly 300 communities have applied for technical assistance in the first two cohorts of the program, just showing how much appetite there is to grow the recreation economy, and knowing that this interagency partnership is providing technical assistance on the ground to all these great communities really bodes well for the future of the recreation economy. And last but not least, Massachusetts became the 18th state to establish an Office of Outdoor Recreation. In December, Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito, as part of the Baker-Polito administration, announced the creation of this new office. And we're really looking at 2023 to be a big year for the creation of new state offices of outdoor recreation. We have a number of states that have either already introduced legislation or plan to introduce legislation. So keep your eyes peeled for the growth of recreation at the state level as well. But all in all, 2022 was a major year for the outdoor recreation economy. Thanks in large part to the work of many of you on this call and the work you do to steward public lands and waters around the United States. So thanks for having me, Eugenie, and I'll pass it back to you.
Awesome, thank you. And we are, with that theme in mind, kind of where we've been. Thank you so much, Chris. Really excited. And for folks who are following along, there's gonna be a lot of information thrown at you. So please feel free to ask questions in the chat, or if there's something really that you want to speak out loud, feel free to raise your hand. We do want this to be somewhat of a discussion instead of a webinar, a series. But Additionally, for folks who are doing the report outs, because right now we're going to jump into the federal land management agents, federal land and water management agencies report outs. And for those folks who are kind of giving us a lot of information, feel free to put links in the chat that folks can access. And then all of that will be available to all of you with the recording and some notes after this call. So I am going to actually give it back to Dusty to kind of start. I don't know if Dusty has anything in between.
No, not this month. Apologies.
Okay, no problem. Then we'll kick off our agency report outs with BLM.
Great. Thanks, Eugenie, and thanks, everybody. Again, Kevin Oliver, excited to be here with you all as the Division Chief for Recreation and Visitor Services at BLM headquarters. We're going to start off today kind of connecting to some of the topics that Chris mentioned. And one of the director's priorities is restoring public lands and practicing conservation. So we are doing, as we speak, exciting internal work on bipartisan infrastructure law projects, portfolio development, and also hopefully looking forward to more work on the IRA investments. So I think in the coming months, there will be external communications. You all will no doubt be excited to hear what the BLM and other agencies are doing this year with bipartisan infrastructure law and IRA. So a lot going on there, and we're positioned to make strategic and beneficial improvements to ecosystems and recreation sites, as Chris mentioned. So we're really excited about that work, and things are going in a nice, in a manner I think you'll all be very impressed. The second item under restoring public lands is about our National Conservation Lands Program. The Conservation Lands Foundation is collaborating with us on a messaging campaign, and the theme is directly aligned with this group here. It's about respecting, connecting, and protecting those national conservation areas, which are, of course, some of our most highly visited areas akin to parks. And so it's going really well. The partners are currently developing the messaging, which we will share with you all as well. And we're expecting that to kick off this summer. So again, something to look forward to. And then the next topic is the director's priority of emphasizing recreational opportunities for all communities, which I know we're all moving forward on. And so I'm hoping you will see soon some outreach for your input to BLM's 21st Century Recreation Strategy. I think you've heard vibrations on this coming up, but we expect to announce the development and opportunity for stakeholders to provide input into the future of recreation on BLM managed lands. We're focusing on systems which will be repetitive and become part of our agency's habit and processes to deal with increased visitation demands, and also ensure that all communities and all citizens in the face of the nation are invited to their public lands and feel welcome and see their public lands as part of what they do on a regular basis. We are expecting the BLM's foundation to emerge, as it is, the board is still being formed. We expect that they will take the lead. The Foundation for America's Public Lands will take the lead role in the stakeholder engagement. So we're really excited about that and expect you to hear that communication before summer. And so with that, the real message we have is the time for increased investment in BLM outdoor recreation is now, and we inside the BLM are doing that, right sizing our investment, making sure our teams, our staff time, and our budgets are well aligned to meet the demands of public land recreation. A couple more things, Eugenie, before we hand it off. Public lands access is a big part of what we're all doing, and we're collaborating with other agencies, but our BLM states individually are looking for opportunities to increase access or remedy access problems. And then also you've heard about digitizing our easements and making sure that the electronic media is there. Everyone's on their phone these days, and we know if there's access, they should be able to see it on their phone because that's how people are getting to our public lands. Also on recreation, we're completing our full build out right now on online recreation permitting for outfitters, guides, competitive events. So web-based solutions, no more paper. And then the last item about the director's priority is continuing to rebuild the agency. You know that the BLM's been through a lot, and we are really solidifying and gelling well. We're recruiting diverse team members to meet the needs of public land management going forward. And our directorate is proud to be the Western anchor for BLM, and much of our teams are moving back to DC, and I'd say we're doing really well in that transition, and still adjusting as I would say. So a lot going on there, Eugene, and thank you for the opportunity, and thank you all for your interest in recreating responsibly.
Thank you, Kevin. And I want to thank Kevin also for his service on he is the federal liaison to the Recreate Responsibly Steering Committee. So not just leading for the BLM and for that federal working group, but also representing. So thank you for that. I think next on the docket is U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, but I'm not sure I saw anyone jump on. We may be missing folks. But is there anyone on from Fish and Wildlife Service that I'm missing? I'll give a moment.
I'm
Oh,
on.
DC, there
My
you
name is
are.
I'm DC Carr, U.S. Fish and
Okay.
Service. I did not know I'd be representing my agency today. I'm a regional coordinator for recreation in Pacific Southwest region, Sacramento, California. But just a couple of top level items from Fish and Wildlife Service, particularly the National Wildlife Refuge System, where we host millions of visitors every year for hunting, fishing, wildlife watching, lots of wildlife driven recreation. We are in the process of addressing a lot of maintenance backlogs with funds from the Great American Outdoors Act. Like all the land management agencies, we have a huge deferred maintenance backlog, and that's been a great challenge for us, particularly with, as others have mentioned, a steep increase in visitation, but only small budget increases here and there. We did receive a budget increase this year in the FY23 appropriations bill for the National Wildlife Refuge System, but that increase does not actually cover the cost of doing business with inflation and just the increased cost of doing everything. So we're kind of managing on a flat budget, but we're doing what we can with what we have, and we're trying to be as small and mighty as we possibly can. Meanwhile, like other land managers, we are managing into climate change. And our agency is beginning to put into words what our long-term response to climate change will be. We're seeking to resist environmental change where possible, but also to accept losses where we need to accept losses in order to maintain biological integrity in other places and continue to offer those wildlife watching and hiking opportunities. We also intend to seek to direct that change where possible by utilizing the assets that we have, the wetlands that can absorb sea level rise, things like that. Questions that we're starting to kick around right now is how do we talk to the public about this, and how do we tell these stories? Because people hear about climate change in the news, they read about it, and it seems like a faraway thing, but as many of you know, it's happening right now, and we're actually having to manage for it. Last thing I'll mention here is that our agency's director this fall put out 2 director's orders, which are going to, have a very positive impact on how we manage public visitation. There's a director's order on advancing diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility for the entire system to create transformational and lasting change for our agency. We are oft seeking to create a much more welcoming place to visit for not just people who've been visiting wildlife refuges for their whole life, but people who've maybe never really, gone and participated in outdoor recreation in wild places. We also have the director's order on enhancing our service and our work with our tribal partners. So we're working really hard in the agency to change how we do business and be more inclusive in everything that we do. Thank you very much.
Thanks, DC. And we're now moving into a report out from NOAA. And I think we normally we have Grace on, but she is not available. She had something come up with it this morning, but I think we have someone else from NOAA. Do we have, is Nick, is that you?
Hi, yeah, my name is Nick Zacher. I work on Grace's team. I'm really this is my first time attending. Grace recommended that I attend. I don't really have anything to report out. I apologize, but I'm looking forward to attending these meetings from here on out.
No, that's okay. And Grace did text me and send great apologies that she had something that she had to deal with and come up. And unfortunately, we don't have our dear friend Doug from the National Weather Service, who I'm sure is dealing with a lot right now, which is why he can't be here. DC mentioned the environmental changes we're all dealing with. So the Weather Service is certainly taken aback right now. That said, who we have next on the agenda, we have National Park Service and National Park Foundation, if they're available. So who do we have from National Park Service? We have Beth. Go ahead and kick us off.
Yeah, actually I have a couple of us, so I'll jump in first. And first, I'm glad it was noted in the chat that we first want to say thank you and congratulations to Bob Ratcliffe, who retired from the National Park Service at the end of last year, and we're all, I think, rather envious that he gets to go and recreate even more now that he's retired. But he did so much work and worked so closely with all of you, and so yeah, huge thanks and congratulations to Bob. Really also just want to, from a communications perspective in our communications office, which is what I do, I'm in our office of communications. I'll put in the chat, we are actively looking at pushing out some messaging that we're looking at for the whole year, encouraging storytelling around that close connection that we all have with public lands, with parks and public lands, and the places that we all are responsible for stewarding and helping communities take care of. So what are those place-based experiences that we can tell stories about, and what is the impact of that experience? And I think it really helps us speak to why this work that we all do is so incredibly important for the folks that we serve and for the people that we serve. So I just wanted to share that out. We also, I'll put both, that's I just put in the partner information for partners. This is the more, this is the second link is the link that is more for the public and for the visiting public. Especially. So that's a big part of what we're doing, and we'll see how, as we do this, one of our goals is also how is it that public lands are for all, that parks and public lands are for everyone. And so I think that's going to be a big part of what we're trying to do here. And we'll have some moments through the year where we kind of do some what we call surge moments, especially maybe around the National Park Service birthday in August. So stay tuned for more on that. But anyway, so that's kind of what we're doing from a communications perspective. And then I think tying into that, I'll throw it to Jennifer Proctor, who is with us from our public risk management program, and worked really closely with you all in terms of how to recreate responsibly on parklands. And then if Scott Anderson is with us from the Park Foundation, or someone from the Park Foundation, I'll let them go too. So, and also just a shout out to Patsy McEntee, who's going to talk about FICOR, because that's a huge part of what a lot of our recreation staff is supporting too. So, Jen, you're muted. Jen, you're muted.
So many things to click. So my name is Jennifer Proctor. I'm the branch chief for the Public Risk Management Program. Our program is focused on the prevention of unintentional visitor injuries. We're located at our Washington office, and so we coordinate with Beth and others on spreading our visitor safety messaging and looking at strategies to prevent injuries. We're going to have two main focus areas for this upcoming summer when it comes to risk communications to visitors. We're revamping our project MPS trip planning guide and our trip plan template. We kind of took this idea from Adventure Smart in Canada and New Zealand to address the recreational needs and understanding of new visitors or inexperienced visitors coming to our parks. So the trip planning guide talks about how to plan for your trip. And then the trip plan template is a form that they can fill out and leave with a trusted contact before they go on their trip. So somebody knows where they're at if they don't show up at the time that they're supposed to when they finish their activity at a park. And we do have these materials available on the health and safety subject site right now, but we're trying to make them, more graphically friendly and interesting and hopefully engaging for our visitors to use. And then we'll be working with our Office of Communications. We're still strategizing on a summer heat campaign to address, the rising numbers of heat illness incidents that we're seeing across the Park Service. So once we are all ready to announce that, we'll be sharing those materials with this group. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I think that moves us into Bureau of Reclamation, although I'm not sure. Do we have anyone from Bureau of Reclamation with us today? Okay, they're out today. Let's go to U.S. Forest Service. I know we have a number of different divisions represented, but I think I see Penny on. Penny, is it?
Hey, good morning.
Hi,
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Penny Wu, Assistant Director of Recreation. I have to remember that all the time. Assistant Director of Recreation in the WO, but I sit here in the Denver metro area. Glad to be with everyone today. So a few of the things that the agency is emphasizing, kind of rolling over actually from last year, some of our high leverage things in the agency that the chief is wanting employees to focus on, kicked things off last year, but clearly is going to roll into next year and years beyond. And the first thing is the equity action plan. This is a broad set of high leverage actions that will address President's Executive Order 13985, advancing racial equity and support for underserved communities. And from that equity action plan that the Forest Service developed last summer and rolled out, there are three main focus areas that each have different actions associated with it. So one of the themes is community service to all. Another one is economic stability. And then the other one is building health and resilience. Recreation has a portion of one of the actions within the equity action plan, and that is to modernize some of our recreation special uses processes, both internally and externally. And we think that if we can implement some of these rec special use shifts, it really will open up and provide access to those that haven't had access in the past. Another agency focus last year was standing up an Office of Sustainability and Climate. And we have, the chief's done that. There's probably a couple dozen different new employees that have been filling out that Office of Climate and Sustainability, each with a different, there's probably 3 or 4 different divisions. And I think that 2023 will show some of the impacts from that office being stood up. So excited about the work that they're going to be doing. A fourth thing that the Forest Service kicked off last year was the chief's wildfire crisis strategy implementation plan. This is a 10-year implementation plan, and some of you may have participated in some of the roundtables that this work took place last year. And the chief has great emphasis on implementing a lot of the actions from this wildfire risk reduction plan. And then the fourth thing that I'm probably most stoked about, but don't tell my boss, is we initiated an action plan, a strategy and action plan. You may have heard of it, known as Reimagine Recreation. And of course, as the name implies, it's specific to recreation. It's a strategic planning effort to really reimagine, what recreation could be, to engage both internally and externally those that have been helping us with recreation. And as you know, when I say recreation, I mean the entire portfolio, of all the different programs under the recreation and wilderness and wild and scenic rivers umbrellas. So this action plan hopefully will set clear priorities for our work. Things like how can we continue to build capacity? How can we bring back rec planning as an emphasis in our recreation programs? We've started this process last summer, and we have contracted with our colleagues at the Denver Service Center, our National Park Service colleagues out of the Denver Service Center, to help us facilitate a lot of the internal and external engagements. Last fall, we focused on a lot of those internal engagements, a lot of listening sessions. And the thing that I really like about this effort that I haven't seen before in our agency in my career is the fact that we have made an honest effort, a strategic and aggressive effort to reach out to our field employees and ask them what's working, what's not working, what's on your mind, what eats your lunch every day, what can we do different in the future. This will probably be about another 10 to 12 month effort. The next round of engagements will include our external sessions. So listening sessions, open door kind of engagements, roundtables, if you will, with many of our general publics and partners, just like you guys. So more to come on that. So reimagine recreation. If you've heard that buzz term, then that's what it's all about. A few other things that we're working on specific to recreation, lots of policy that we're trying to move forward in our recreation special uses program, making some changes to outfitter and guides, concessionaire, and recreation events. Climbing directive, we're trying to get that one out the door for public comment. That one's very close. Of course, the e-bike directive, we've implemented that one last year, and we'll continue to implement that one. And then we're also finalizing our chainsaw and crosscut saw policy directive. So, and then of course, just like every other interagency or every other federal agency, we're implementing GAOA bill and IRA, trying to get all those funds out to the field as much as possible. And of course, participating in FICOR. I've probably said enough. You can tell I got a little frog in my throat. And I love the virtual world so that I don't feel like I'm making anyone sick sitting around a conference table. So I know that I have some other Forest Service colleagues on the line. I'll welcome you to jump in and add anything that I've missed. And if not,
just one quick ad from the communications office. We are working on Nature Invites You with the National Forest Foundation. So we expect to roll that out late summer, early fall. And so we'll keep you all posted on that. We're just starting the outreach efforts. That's all for me. Thanks, Penny.
thank you, Susie.
I'll say
I see
thank
Sam
you.
Ryder.
Oh. Go ahead, Sam, if you have anything to add. You might be on mute. All right. Oh, it's yeah, you should. All right. Well, Sam is free. We'll come back to you, Sam, because we're going to go to our colleague Cassie at the Army Corps of Engineers to hear from the Army Corps of Engineers. Thank you, Penny, and thank you, Suzanne.
All right, I'm going to attempt to share my screen here. All right, are you seeing it?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm Cassie Moxick. I'm doing a 6-month developmental with the headquarters for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Natural Resource Management Team. Ryan and Heather can't be here today, so you've got me. We have some exciting updates. So for our 2022 update, we are fully staffed finally, so that's exciting for the NRM team. We have 3 new members. Mike Richards is the new land manager, Tara Witzel is the IJA DERSA program manager, and Allison Walker is the new federal transportation program manager. The team was very active in several interagency working groups, including FICOR, Maplin Act, Nature and Communities Committee, the Compact Act, several others that are listed on the slide. And as directed by the Energy and Water Development and Related Agencies Appropriations Bill of 2021, the Corps created a recreation task force to develop a plan to maintain and enhance public recreational opportunities at USACE projects. So the initial recreation task force report was sent out to our partners on January 11th, and the second report is now being routed to our ASA and OMB. These reports provide information on our rec assets, environmental justice efforts, stakeholder and public input, and our backlog maintenance, and the total recreation backlog that was reported to Congress in the year 2 report was 3.4 billion. So pretty high, like everyone else's. Our recreation budget, it was cut by 67 million in FY22, or from FY22 to FY23. We were able to survive with a bit of creative programming, but there would have been massive closures if we couldn't have done that. The FY24 budget, we don't have it back, but it's looking like we're not too optimistic about it. We're hoping that we're not cut like we were in FY23. We have IJA funded projects. We're continuing towards the completion of $101 million in various improvement projects. We'll hopefully be completed with those in FY23, and that's mostly upgrading roadways and utilities. FY22 visitation, our preliminary data indicates approximately 267 million visits. Over the past 5 years, we've averaged 264 million, so we're just above the recent norm. FY22 revenues totaled 78.2 million, so that's up over 11 million from last year and nearly 25 million higher than what we collected in FY19. And then our partnership and volunteer data, our volunteers provided a value to the nation of 46 million, and our partnership value totaled over 139 million. So that's exciting. For our 2023 expectations, so we haven't received our budget back, passed back. Like I said, we're not too optimistic. Hopefully it's not as bad as it was for FY23. We're updating multiple policies and regulations involving rec facility standards, rec fees, operation condition assessments, uniforms, Title 36, lots of policy updates. We've instituted 4 new fee-free days on USACE managed lands, including MLK Day, USACE birthday, Juneteenth, and National Public Lands Day. We also just became official national partners with Trout Unlimited, and that is with the purpose of provide a foundation for collaboration related to protection, restoration, and the management of cold water fisheries of mutual interest. And my last bullet here, we have an EJ strategic plan now. So this community outreach and engagement document was released in December, and it focuses on 7 main objectives to improve, strengthen, and develop how we communicate, interact, and support with the disadvantaged and underserved communities. So that's our update.
Great. Thank you so much, Cassie. I really appreciate that. And thank you so much for the wealth of knowledge in that sheet. That's something that will be linked in the chat, because I know a lot of folks were trying to get some of those stats. I'm now passing it off to our colleague at CDC.
Hi, everyone. My name is Caitlin Graff, and I'm a health scientist in the Physical Activity and Health branch at CDC. Since people are often being physically active when they're recreating, I thought we could start this year off with a couple of our physical activity stats. So the Physical Activity Guidelines for Americans recommends that adults participate in 150 minutes of aerobic physical activity per week, and then at least 2 days of muscle strengthening activities. And then for youth, it's that people get at least 60 minutes of physical activity per day and do some type of muscle strengthening at least 3 days a week. So the data that we use for tracking and monitoring all of this comes out every other year. And that's for both youth, it's on the odd years, and for adults, it's on the even years. And so we currently have data from 2020. There is a bit of a data lag. So I'll share that one, and I'll also share the link where you can keep up to date with that. That's through the Healthy People 2030 website. So the numbers for typically we look at it separating the aerobic physical activity and muscle strengthening, and then we look at it combined. And so ideally people would be meeting that recommendation with the combined data. And so for adults, we currently only have about a quarter of US adults meeting that combined recommendation. And so we definitely want that number to be higher. The number of people meeting the physical activity guideline for just aerobic alone is at around 48%. And so while that's definitely better, it still means that about half of US adults are not getting the recommended physical activity that they need. Something is always better than nothing, but ideally we would still get that number a little bit higher. And then we also have information for youth. And unfortunately, what we've been seeing is that number is trending in the wrong direction. And so more youth are becoming less physically active. Currently, the data show that 1 in 6 high school students meet that guideline. And I think it's important to note too that a lot of the work that people in this group are doing can help people to become more physically active, and especially while doing it in a responsible way. And so hopefully the work that we're doing together can help people to meet those guidelines in future years. The other update that I wanted to share is that we do have a new funding opportunity coming out of the Division of Nutrition, Physical Activity, and Obesity. And we anticipate that it will be coming out over the next couple of weeks. There are 3 funding mechanisms, and these have been forecasted on grants.gov. And I'll share a link with the current recipients, and so then you can see an example of what that looks like. So they include the State Physical Activity and Nutrition Program, which funds at the state level. And then there's also the High Obesity Program, which funds land-grant universities working in counties where the obesity rate is 40% or greater. And then there's also the Racial and Ethnic Approaches to Community Health Program. And that focuses on improving health outcomes for specific racial and ethnic groups. So I will share all of those links, and hopefully you can spread the word about these opportunities for people who might find that relevant. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Caitlin. And certainly in our agency report outs, last but not least, Chris actually mentioned them, the Rural Economic Development Team. They're at USDA. Terry, I think you're on. Terrence. I saw, are you on mute? You might have dropped them. Is anyone else from Rural Economic Development on? Tim? Oh, Terrence, I see him rejoining. There we go, connecting to audio. Terry, can you hear me? And can you give a report out?
Yes, I can.
There,
yes, I can.
There we go.
I was knocked off. Maybe somebody thought I was going to say something. Okay. Anyway, good morning and good afternoon, everybody. This is Terry McDermott from Rural Development. I'm with USDA in the Innovation Center. As you might recall, in 2021-22, we instituted the Equity Program, and we have followed up with the Rural Partners Network, which are 2 programs that are starting to merge, and we're going into the second phase this year. The focus is those rural areas that don't have the capacity or the personnel as far as numbers of people to access our programs and to manage our programs. So we're partnering in the Rural Partners Network. We're partnering with 20 other agencies, including EPA, Forest Service, EDA, and others, to be able to get them the programs that they need. And the great thing about that is that we are merging the 2 of them. There will be a big rollout of the second phase this year. Now, one of the things that's going to be part of the second phase is a webinar that we are hosting along with EPA and HUD to address the housing issues in gateway communities. As many of my colleagues on the call realize and know that the housing prices have skyrocketed in places that are close to parks, recreation areas, etc. And we're having trouble hiring people that can afford to live there. And many of these areas don't have affordable housing for people at the GS 9, 10, or 11, or any GS level. So to that end, we have put together a webinar for February 15th to address that. And I have put something, or I did put something in the chat. I was knocked off, so I'll put it in later. But it will be February 15th from 2 o'clock to 3:30 p.m. Eastern time. And we will have representatives from HUD, EPA, our own housing folks, and then people from 3 different agencies, private agencies that are working with the Forest Service and other local communities to address the housing issue. So I'll retype that and put it in the chat, and I will stand for questions. I also have several of my colleagues from rural development on the call, and they may want to have something to add.
Well,
What are those
I don't-
private organizations?
There is, we're going to call up the, it is the, one is the, let me find it. I just sent out the notice.
So,
One of
so
them
I'm
is-
gonna, Terry, I'm sorry, just in the interest of moving us along the agenda, I'm gonna ask that if you could, when you find that, just put that in the chat to answer.
I shall.
Thank you so much. I think it's really exciting to see, you know, again, with Chris starting us off and folks, the themes throughout, how much recreation and outdoor recreation really impacts so many different things, whether we're talking about or is also impacted, talking about things like climate and housing and things like that. So really appreciate kind of the breadth of what we're talking about here. That said, to kind of close out our retrospective, we have Janelle Smith from rec.gov to really kind of walk us through some amazing statistics from the last year, and then to set us up for where we're going in 2023. And I'll pass it to Janelle.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate the time, Eugenie, and it's been really great to listen to all the updates from the different organizations and agencies with whom we partner and participate on recreation.gov, and just a bit of groundbreaking here for folks who may not be fully aware. Recreation.gov is the federal government's reservation and trip planning platform of choice, and I am going to go through some highlights, especially I think for those who participate on rec.gov, but also all those who are in just the outdoor recreation space. Hopefully this information is insightful. Before I do that, though, in listening to folks around the room, I just want to acknowledge some of the real synergies that we have with our respective efforts, and where there's some really interesting and exciting overlap. So for example, coming up here at the end of January on the 31st is National Plan for Vacation Day. Each year we participate in some way, really taking advantage of the U.S. Travel Association's campaign toolkit and incorporating our own key messaging in really preparing for the outdoor recreation season. This year we're preparing a toolkit that we'll be sharing with our federal participating agencies, and ask them to really tailor that messaging about being prepared, planning ahead. And as always, we always incorporate that recreate responsibly messaging in that as well. The other campaign and effort that we have going on that I think a lot of folks may be interested in and can actually really use some of this great content is our Share Your Story contest. And it's an adventure writing contest for just amateur writers. And what we ask for them is to submit stories about their experiences on their public lands and waters. This will be the 3rd year, and we're launching it in June. And Beth, then for the Park Service, there may be some really interesting ways that we can collaborate with your own storytelling. So, and we all know that storytelling is such a powerful way to convey a lot of the messages and really help to influence behavior. So we're excited to launch that. The other thing that is a major priority for our program is a campaign that we're just getting ready to launch and we'll be engaged with all year. It's called We Are Recreation.gov. And this is coming on the heels of several different news stories and research papers that started really kind of in June and has persisted. And a lot of these news stories are reporting erroneous, misleading information about recreation.gov. And so we're really focused now on recruiting, infiltrating our participating agencies' ranks and asking them to become evangelists for our program, and really ask all of you to do that. We've got a campaign toolkit that we're preparing now, and I'll be sharing. And it's really about setting the record straight and becoming part of the narrative out there and trying to really pull back on some of this information that's simply untrue. So we ask for all of your help in that. We'll be talking especially with our participating agencies. You know, I think it's really going to take a concerted effort by all of us to really help people truly understand what the site is, what this service provides, and how it benefits all of us. So yeah, I appreciate just a little bit of time bringing attention to those things. So with that, I do want to go into just some of the high level statistics that we capture, and I'll just go ahead and share my screen with you all so we can go through that. Let's see here. Let's see if oh, there we go. Okay. So just a few of the high level statistics that I hope, you know, is of interest to folks. First is just a summary page. This is a lot, so I don't expect all of you to absorb all of this, but I'm going to highlight just a couple of these things. And are they? I don't know if you all are seeing it. I'm not sure my slide.
We're if you could put it in present mode. I don't know if that would help, just because it's a little small on the screen.
Are you seeing a kind of a little honeycomb graphic?
We are seeing the honeycomb graphic. It's a little small on the screen, but I think that it'll work. I think it'll work.
It is in presentation mode, so I'm not sure.
I think you might be sharing the other, because yeah, it's okay. It works. It works. Keep going.
Okay, well, let me see if this helps. All right. Okay, well, hopefully that works for y'all. I'll try to increase the screen as much as I can.
Got it. That's good.
All right, hopefully that's a little bit better. So just a couple of details I want to bring it to your attention. And that is really the number of reservations in last year. And it really jumped up to over 10 million. We're just blasting records for these last 3 years. So I'm sure that agencies are also seeing that play out on the ground. It's also, we had a really significant increase in our, what we call the Net Promoter Score, a 95% increase year over year. And that is the metric that we use to gauge satisfaction of our visitors and users who come to recreation.gov to make their reservations for trip planning, for all the reasons that they tend to visit. So just a couple of really significant ratings. One other is really the rating on our mobile app. We have a 4.9 and 5.0 rating out of a 1 to 5 rating system, both on Apple and Android. So we're really proud of that. So with that, I'm going to switch to the next slide. And really what we have found over this last year and the last few years in working with our new contracting partner, Booz Allen Hamilton, is we saw this as a year of growth and stability. And it's really improving and enhancing capabilities across the entire program. Anything from being able to access more data and visualization deployment internally. That's more reports to our facility managers. Again, the customer satisfaction increasing.
Chanel, we're on the same slide, just FYI. We're not on, we didn't advance slides.
Okay, okay, I apologize.
That's okay.
Thanks for letting me know.
Yeah, there we go.
So this is what I was speaking to, and some of those other graphics on that previous page spoke to this as well. And one of the things is just introducing new services that we're learning from our facility managers, those folks who are on the ground managing these locations, listening to them. What are the challenges they face? What are the problems they're trying to solve? And in response, we were able to stand up some new services. So oops, I skipped. So here's the reservation data. This is the dramatic increase you saw earlier, but when you see it's stacked up year over year, starting in fiscal year 19, which was the first year that we launched the new version of recreation.gov, you see just this absolute dramatic increase in the demand for recreation. And while it has leveled off a little bit in terms of not seeing quite the huge growth from one year to the next, from 20 to 21, there still is that increase in demand.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is, I know, impossible to see all the metrics at the bottom of the slide, so I'll just highlight them. On the far left is camping, and these are year over year. So green to dark blue takes you from, again, FY19 through FY22. Camping has been and continues to be the backbone of our system and the majority of the inventory that we have to offer. So you'll always see these really significant in comparison to the other types of services, types of activities. But timed ticket entry is one that I like to highlight. We've just introduced that in FY21, and we did so in response to the pandemic, such that different high demand locations that are incredibly popular could manage visitation in a way that was safe for the visitors and safe for their employees. And that now has become the second highest purchased activity or service on recreation.gov. And then this is by agency. So the U.S. Forest Service, you can see on the far left, the second, the Army Corps of Engineers, and the third, the National Park Service. So those are the ones that are the most dramatic. And again, these are separated from green to blue, from fiscal year 19 to fiscal year 22. I want to point out that the Bureau of Land Management, while those numbers look small in comparison to the other agencies, it's been a dramatic growth for them over the past 2 years as they bring on much more inventory. So we'll expect to see that increase here over the next few years as well. And I talked earlier about some new services, and specific to those that we launched just this last year that are making a really big difference is Scan and Pay. This allows people to go to an area, with that offer first come, first serve services, scan a QR code and pay right there on site. Donations allows the agencies to open up, if they choose to use this, to allow people through the reservation workflow to make a donation to specific areas that they wish to do so. So we've really seen a huge increase in those donations for those agencies who have opted into this. So it's been just a great, again, a service that those agencies can take advantage of and benefit from. The widget's a really interesting one. We started the pilot program with the Park Service just about 2.5 years ago. And what that allows folks to do is when they're on the agency websites, they're planning trips, they're researching different locations, they have the opportunity then to go through a reservation workflow using the back-end reservation workflow on recreation.gov without leaving, say, the National Park Service, Forest Service, or BLM sites. So the transaction is occurring right there on those .gov sites that they're on, but using the engine that recreation.gov provides. I just want to touch on this briefly. There's a lot here. I don't expect you to really look at this. The only thing is what I want, the takeaway from this particular slide is the suite of tools that we use and the data that we analyze to really understand the visitor. What are they having trouble with? What brings them joy? What really helps them succeed in the just what they're coming to recreation.gov to do. And we have found that through this suite of tools that we employ, we're better connected to understanding our customers, not just those visitors, but those facility managers who are managing these locations, such that we can respond sometimes very quickly to their needs, making just micro adjustments to the site, or even overhaul certain experiences to better accommodate their needs. This is one of the things that I'm most proud of. We stood this new system up to be more user-centric, and our teams are really delivering on that promise. And just some more visitation and transaction metrics. Again, just continuing to see improvements in the number of sessions and conversions. And what this tells us is that people are actually having greater levels of success when they come to the recreation.gov with this purpose in mind. So it's just another way that we're gauging the success of the things that we're doing. And the last thing I wanted to share with you are just some demographics that might be of interest. So you can see the different age groups that are represented. And we're seeing it's really common for this age group from 35 to 65 to be some of the predominant age groups. We're really happy to see that the 25 to 18-year-old or 18 to 25 all the way up to 34 are increasing as well. And that's been really great. The states that are most prominent, where most reservations are coming from, California, really a function of just how much inventory and locations are there. So that's all I wanted to share with you all, and happy to take any questions that you might have as I kind of wrap up my time with you.
Janelle, I thank you so much. This is incredible. And I knew you'd have like a wealth of knowledge. I think the main questions our folks are kind of chomping at the bit to kind of get these stats in hand. So I'm just confirming before I answer for you that we will be able to share some of these out within the notes.
Yes, I will. I put not this entire slide deck. Some of it is proprietary, but yes, those data that are available, I'm happy to provide those in a slide deck.
Thank you so much, Janelle.
Sure.
And yeah, and I know folks have lots of questions for you. Please feel free if you have questions or if something comes up, put that in the chat. I'm going to continue to move us along. Excitingly, kind of, again, Janelle really set the stage for where we were and where we were in 22. And, you know, folks were talking, every agency mentioned FICOR, Chris mentioned it in the very beginning to open us up. And so in thinking about 2023 and our priorities and how we're evolving as an outdoor coalition, I think it's important to look at kind of this federal interagency group and how the priorities of that group. And so we're excited to hear from Patsy McEntee, and I'm going to invite her to the table.
Hey, thanks.
Talk about FICOR.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure and honor to be here. I was involved a long time ago when Recreate Responsibly first started on kind of the regular calls, but have not been involved most recently until now. So it's really exciting to be back here and just see how far and how successful this effort has been over the last few years. So my name is Patsy McEntee. I'm a senior outdoor recreation planner with the National Park Service, and the National Park Service has been tasked with the first year of leadership for the FICOR. And so excitedly, also, I just was on the Hill with House Natural Resources working on the rec package, and they needed someone to fill this role, and it's in my bailiwick. So I'm really excited to be occupying this position for the year. We'll say thanks to Beth Stern for the shout out, and also a tip of the flat hat to Bob Radcliffe and his multiple years and decades really of leadership in the recreation realm. So today I want to give you a brief update of where we are in our process. Our MOU was signed in July, as everyone knows. We basically kicked off again our revamp of FICOR in September, and then was really focused on lifting up our operational charter and getting some framework for how we work together in place. We were able to look at the MOU and really develop some guidelines for how we do that, and brought our principals together on December 15th to officially kick off the FICOR. It was really exciting having all of the agency and bureau directors and leadership all at the table talking about what their priorities were. And we heard very clearly that equity and access is a huge one for everyone. I think that even, in our discussions amongst each other, it bleeds through a lot of what we do. I will say, our objectives and goals really focus on 3 large tenets that I'll describe here. The first one really being improving coordination and partnership building. I mean, we've been doing this for, a very long time, and I think we just keep getting better at it, right? Despite the hiatus of FICOR in the last administration, we continue to work those relationships and advance that coordination. And again, it's amazing to see how far Recreate Responsibly and other stewardship and public-private partnership relationships and efforts, how far they've come. And we just look forward to continuing those efforts in that relationship. The second tenet is promoting equitable access, youth engagement, and career development. We really want to look at the future and evaluate where we are now and how we change or adapt our practices to really use that lens of future thinking and creating an outdoors for all mindset in all of our activities. And then the third one is expanding coordination of visitor information, education, and data. We know, looking at the rec package and everything we do with our partners and the kinds of information that we get from the public, that there's a lot of improvements to be made to advance the visitor experience and create sustainable recreational opportunities for everyone. We know that we have a long way to go in the data coordination realm, and that that there's a lot of evaluation that needs to happen to figure out, what our vision for data collection and how we use it into the future. There's quite a bit of work to do there. So in terms of what steps we need to take at this point to be actionable and successful, we really need to work on, firstly, a plan that really reaches long-term sustainability for the FICOR. At this point, we aren't a funded organization, and we need to find a pot of money that we can sustain a coordinator, which would be my role for the FICOR. And then we also do need to, bring our operational charter forward in order to be reflective of that sustainability. The other items that we're working on is we're working to get a website up and running so that we open those communication channels and have an equitable conversation with both the public stakeholders and industry all together, and be able to be that coordination hub. So as we know, FICOR is a coordination entity. We're not a project-driven entity. We can broadly say that this is an area that we want to focus on or prioritize. But at the end of the day, the agencies and bureaus are really responsible for carrying out the projects that that would support the goals that FICOR is prioritizing. And then the third item that I already mentioned is finalizing that operational charter and really, thinking about the MOU as being our current lead on how we're going to be working for the next year or two. I just want to kind of, end this little wrap up and summary in saying that there's a ton of opportunities in the public-private partnerships realm regarding FICOR. I think that there's our ability to reach new audiences, be equitable with all communities, and be able to provide the best visitor and user experience for public lands and waters. We really need, that kind of coordination and information and creativity from folks that aren't just federal organizations. And we really appreciate, looking forward to new and renewed relationships and being able to use that information successfully and work together on sharing information. That's all I have. If anyone has questions, please reach out. We are moving quickly towards creating a work plan and reviewing that at the end of this month. So we should be able to share more information here in the next month or two.
Thank you, Patsy. That was great. And I'm certain folks have questions. Feel free to put those in the chat. We will be continuing to, work within our federal working group here that coordinates with FICOR as well. So really excited to continue this work together. Now we're going to talk about kind of, again, how the coalition is evolving. I know we're getting down to the wires and people are getting ready to get off their other, get on to the rest of their day, but excited to share some things and going to pass it to Brandy Horton, who's been very active in the chat, who is the co-lead of our communications committee, to talk a little bit about the future of how we are evolving as a coalition, along with kind of FICOR and the federal agencies and our local and state partners as well. So how we're thinking about how we communicate what we do as a coalition and kind of what's on the horizon for 23. Thank you, Brandy.
No problem. And yes, I love chat. I'm a massive chat user, so apologies in advance. I just dropped into the chat the binding statement for Recreate Responsibly. And I want to share for folks who may not have noticed in the December wrap-up email, that was kind of the introduction of this statement that was created with a lot of leadership from Eugenie and the steering committee as part of the planning process. But it's also really important to where we go for communications for the coalition looking forward, because it serves almost as the North Star. And when we look at strategic communications planning, thinking about how the communications is upholding kind of a broader programmatic goal or kind of focus of a product, an organization, a coalition, that's kind of the mindset that we're starting to take. And so the communications committee is really working collectively to develop a strategic communications plan that will reinforce and support this binding statement. And it's a natural evolution, I think, of where the communications for the coalition have gone. 2020 was really a direct response to an immense shared challenge across the entire world, and something that was putting kind of people in our outdoor places into a really difficult space. And it was a response to that. It was a positive response to that. And there was so much rallying around that moment. When you look at 21 and 22, there was a lot of emphasis on iteration to continue to meet the moment that continued to change. And then also, I think, customization of that messaging so that we could scale the reach of the tenants and really scale the reach of the brand of Recreate Responsibly. And now, as we look ahead to 2023, the communications working group is really thinking about, how do we define a more proactive communications approach that supports the binding statement, that really addresses these core issues that the coalition is trying to achieve, but also takes a look at very strategically, like, who do we need to engage in order for us to be successful here? How do we maybe get outside of our own echo chamber a little bit and reach into different spaces? What are those folks? What do they already know? What do they already think? What do they already do? And what do we hope evolves in all of those areas for them? And in order to do that, where do we need to be? And really being thoughtful about that, whether it's figuratively, where do we need to be in virtual spaces? Where do we need to be in our messaging? And literally, literally, where does the coalition need to show up so that we can connect with them, communicate with them, engage these audiences in different ways? So we had our first conversation just this week. It was on Tuesday. So there are no fancy slides or final notes yet, but I wanted to share just kind of some of the early themes that were coming out of that discussion. We were talking a lot about kind of the challenges in achieving that binding statement and kind of moving towards some of those big goals that are captured there and the opportunities that are in front of us. So themes I think we'll continue to poke at and explore further around really understanding the changing nature of people spending time outside. I thought that was an incredibly revelatory piece of the discussion, that there are so many aspects of who these folks are, what's motivating them, what is, what challenges are they experiencing when they're in these spaces. A lot of these folks are not necessarily part of any one ecosystem, and thinking about how we connect with them and understand their experiences, how it's changing the experience in these outdoor places. There's a lot of research I think each of us has done in different ways. How do we bring that together? How do we kind of draw some conclusions that could be useful for the entire outdoor sector to be effective in this work? Thinking about distribution, how are we getting information really into the hands of people who need it, and getting outside of maybe just our sector a bit, because we've been so successful, I think, building a robust coalition, really getting the people in our space to be using this language, using these tenets, really lifting up the messaging and the brand. How do we kind of get out to that next sphere of influence? Thinking about establishing deeper relationships. Eugenie raised this point in our conversation just about like, where's the humanity in all of this and in our connections to the outdoors, and how are we emphasizing the work that's needed to build trust to really create a welcoming and inclusive outdoors. It was raised the challenge of kind of how are we getting above the noise? There's so much information. I feel like in this kind of evolved COVID world that we're in, the online information channels are even more inundated. So thinking about how we get above the noise, how do we really lean into what sets us apart, what makes us unique, and the information that we're providing unique is going to be really important. Making it easier for everyone, agencies, nonprofits, brands, retailers involved in this work to be sharing consistent information. That's been some of our secret sauce, and continuing to do that and continuing to make sure that those tools are readily available, they're responsive to the needs of the coalition and responsive to kind of current events seems like an important priority. And then establishing across all of the constituencies that we all work with. So that's kind of coalition members, that's who we're trying to engage with Recreate Responsibly directly, that an inclusive outdoors is fundamental, right? Like there's no discussion here. Like this is a priority. It is exactly the future that we're trying to create. It's what we want to do. This is where we're going, and really kind of normalizing that mindset, because that is not in a lot of the spaces we work, that is something that is agreed to and everyone kind of stands there. But in some of the spaces where people are visiting, we know that that's not, where that mindset is yet. So really establishing that that is the norm and that is where we are. We also talked a lot about audiences that need to be a priority. And I thought this was a really important part of the conversation. These are the people or the entities that really need to know, think, or do something differently for us to move that binding statement forward, to really kind of be successful in this work. And ultimately, everything we're doing serves the behavior, to shape the behavior of people who are engaging in these spaces at all spectrums, whether they're new to these spaces or they're longtime enthusiasts, but who we're trying to directly engage and who's rising to the top there. We're middle to senior management at land agencies, thinking about them just really kind of us understanding their challenges and them understanding and owning the messaging that can be useful in addressing their challenges and really becoming an evangelist of this work. The influencers and messengers who are becoming more and more often, right, tried and true resources for people to get ideas about what to do, where to go, what new place to explore. Create Responsibly plugs into that very specifically, but it also shapes our thinking about like, who are we leaning on? Should we be looking more at kind of like bloggers and podcasters and press and social media influencers? What kind of shape does that take? Are we asking them to model behavior, amplify our messaging, those kinds of things? And then also really continuing to focus on the retailers and other trusted voices in the community organizations who serve as an initial touch point for folks who are either planning, preparing for outdoor experiences or being affected by them. Local park and rec departments are such an important kind of first line of defense there to really plug into. Close to home partners, thinking about people who, when you're looking at park adventures or trail adventures, things that are happening right in your community, who are those partners who are helping build those connections? Local bike leagues, local walk clubs, things of that nature. And DMOs rose to the top as just another group that we need to really kind of intentionally tap into to make sure they have this information. So where we go from here, we're going to at our next meeting, we're going to dig in a bit more on just kind of tactically, like what are we doing with these groups? What are the types of materials, resources we need to be thinking about creating? Where are the places we need to be? So with that in mind, everyone on the call, if you have any ideas, please feel free to share. Drop them in the chat. You can email Eugenie, you can email me and Katie as the co-chairs of the communications working group. And we're glad to take that in. And if you have a communications representative you think would be a good fit for this conversation, please have them join us. We'd love to welcome them.
Thank you, Brandy. That was a lot to get through really fast, and I really appreciate it. I know folks are again taken off, but I want to just ask you to stay till the bottom of the hour to hear from. We're going to give about 2 minutes to kind of dive a little deeper on the Create Responsibly initiative that Brandy mentioned, really engaging those folks who have intentional voices, whether they're filmmakers or social media influencers. That's the Create Responsibly campaign, which is a sub-campaign of Recreate Responsibly. Really big. We'll give Jeff about 2 minutes to talk about that, but then I'd really like folks to stick around and hear from our new partners at Trails Our Common Ground. I will say just real quick before we jump into that, the three kind of editions, Recreate Responsibly editions that we're looking out for are the winter edition, the wildlife edition coming up, and then thirdly, we are going to be working with our friends at Mapbox on a navigation edition. So that just kind of put that feather in your cap and know that that's coming, and kind of think about how you'll engage. And now would love to hear more about the Create Responsibly initiative from Jeff, about 2 minutes, and then
Sure.
Trails Are Common Ground. Yeah.
Thank you, Eugenie. And Eugenie, that reminded me too, for the winter edition, if you go the desert route, I did employ my nieces and nephews to take some photos in Death Valley this winter break if you need some, so look, reach out. So for those that haven't heard before or just need a refresher, Create Responsibly is a campaign that we've developed that helps to inspire best practices for sustainable, inclusive content creation in the outdoor spaces. This is for everyone from TikTokers to big Hollywood studios. We've developed a series of tenets that are built off of the Recreate Responsibly tenets to guide content creators and how to do so, again, like sustainably and inclusively. And secondly, and perhaps more importantly, is our campaign intends to inspire responsible recreation representation in this content, as Eugenie was sort of referencing. So in order to build awareness, we have been creating a slow burn strategy to bring awareness to the campaign. And our next stop is going to be next week at Sundance Film Festival. We've partnered again with Impact, who's hosting an event called the Eco Bash in collaboration with Earth Justice. We know there will be a lot of outdoor content creators, filmmakers at that event. We are also potentially going to get some visibility through the Redford Center's climate storytelling panel, and also through we will have some postcards through the Utah Film Commission. I just want to give a shout out to the representatives from this committee that participate. We have Dusty, who's sharing some information in the chat. I can see him on my mobile, so I can't see exactly which is being shared. We also have Dina, who works with recreate.gov. Of course, Eugenie, Vivian, and Katie as well. But we also have other people who help us that are from the filmmaking community, and in particular film commissions. So we have now both the Oregon and Utah Film Commissions are part of our planning committee. And through them this year, we will be reaching the broader film commission coalitions and having visibility to all of the film commissions to get them to adopt our practices when they're communicating with, in particular, big film studios that are making television shows and movies in the outdoors. And then the other sort of planning that we're doing right now for a spring event is we're considering hosting a webinar for content creators, in particular online influencers, around the idea of the ethics or morality behind to geotag or not to geotag, which I'm sure suddenly gave a lot of people on this call shudders. And we want to inspire a meaningful conversation, not necessarily take a particular point of view, though we have our own opinions, and we want to see how the community can come to conclusions around how geotech can be both exclusive and inclusive, the impact on outdoor spaces that it has. More to come on that front, but we continue to push forward. So thank you all for listening.
Thank you. And I want to just do a quick welcome to George from IMBA to talk a little bit, just with the few minutes we have left, about our new partnership with the Trails Are Common Ground Coalition. And there will be more on that to come. But today I just want to give a quick welcome.
Thanks, Eugenie. Hello, everybody. Thanks for welcoming us to the call. I'll give a quick little background on IMBA and where Trails Are Common Ground came from. And I think you'll see once we get a little bit farther into Trails Are Common Ground how complementary that campaign is with Recreate Responsibly. A lot of people come to IMBA looking for a place to ride mountain bikes, and that's kind of where we got started. We got started about 30 plus years ago in trail advocacy, and we became known for calling out, epic and iconic places to ride across the country. More recently, our focus is on, and this is probably going to resonate, Brandy, close to home trails. Similar idea, particularly during the pandemic, when people still needed to get outside for all the reasons we need to get outside, but needed to keep it a little bit closer to home. And in the vein of equitable access as well, it's a lot of our work to make sure that we're actually bringing trails to communities or helping facilitate communities, creating outdoor experiences in their area. Another thing that was born out of 2020 was Trails Are Common Ground. And, with the trail use being at an all-time high everywhere, there was a heck of a lot of conflict that I know we all experienced. And the idea behind Trails Are Common Ground was to pull together a coalition of trail users, businesses, advocacy organizations, and just make sure that we're putting forward a great positive message rather than sort of a negative gatekeeper message on how to be a good, responsible trail user. So it started out with that type of message, and all those different perspectives of the folks in the coalition represented and helping to share that message, just to make sure that trails can continue to become a welcoming and inclusive place to play. We've also created some tools to help land managers actually, manage and improve their trails. And one of the recent resources that we've been sharing and emphasizing are focused on EMTBs. There's a whole lot of gray area within e-bikes and all the different classifications, and in any given piece of land, what's actually permissible. So we're really emphasizing right now, creating some tools and creating a little bit more of a conversation around what's actually permissible and appropriate. So that's a whole heck of a lot of stuff. I tried to condense it in, given that I know everyone's got places to be, but more to come.
Thank you, George, and thank you for being here and sitting in. We're really excited we are officially going to be partnering with Trails Are Common Ground, and we have a number of other official partnerships we've had throughout the year. And so really excited about this one. As I put in the chat, we've been in lockstep kind of in terms of ethos. And so really excited to kind of line out some things that we can amplify together, as two coalitions kind of working side by side. So thank you everybody for being here. Thank you, Dusty, for amazingly running the show as always. And thank you everybody for your contributions, both today and always. So yeah, I look forward to next quarter and all the time in between with all of you. Dusty, any parting words?
Thanks, everyone. Get outside this weekend, have fun, do a service project.
Thanks, Phil.